This video is sponsored by Aura. This handsome leather case conceals a mad scientist's alchemy lab, stacked with bizarre chemicals, terrifying tools, and secrets within secrets. But this is not an antique. It's mostly 3D printed. From the contoured velvet to the wooden tray to the stamped wax seals, everything you see is partially or completely made on an ordinary 3D printer. Past episodes featured countless curse techniques and funky filaments, and today we put them to work. Prepare to see dozens of tricks that can take your printing projects to the next level and see them in action. I'm even going to show a few I have never before revealed. And you want to know why? Because I'm a 300-year-old mad scientist slash sorcerer slash surgeon, ripped from the pages of a gothic novella and armed with reality-shredding potions and a dashing mustache. I'm about to meet over 100 new test subjects. I mean wedding guests. They are simply dying for my experimental procedures. Vampires, fairies, and sweet succulent mortals, I am Nerio, self-styled student of all things mundane, arcane, and metaphysical. Allow me to humbly welcome you to Void Star Lab. If the paranormal power players of Prohibition got a pretense to let the daylight into you, better pray you're packing iron. Cold iron. But here in the 2020s, everyone's got the wire on you. The web's lousy with data brokers, shady sharpers who stack spondulics selling your secrets, phone numbers, email, even home address to any hinky hombre with cabbage to spare. You don't need a heater, you need this episode's sponsor, Aura. Look, it doesn't matter who you are. Everyone's info is up for sale. See for yourself. Google where does your name live, and remember, the same goes for your partner, your friends, maybe even your kids. Even if you've never given this info away, data brokers can still buy it from public records, dark web leaks, and even directly from your service providers. Aura buries data brokers in legally binding opt-out requests, and they check back over and over to keep everything down. They can alert you to financial fraud, compromised accounts, and phishing attempts. And if you want to get proactive, you also get an antivirus, VPN, and password manager. For one low fee, Aura gives you everything you need to pry your private info off the web once and for all. You can try everything they have for 2 weeks free by visiting aura.com/Zack Freedman, or click the link in the description. So don't be a chump, get your secrets in the keister before you're the next social security leak. That's aura.com/Zack Freedman. Now let's do the time warp to 1923, back when the word keister meant lockbox. And by 1923, I mean a few weeks ago, because I was LARPing, motherfucker! When folks hear live action roleplay, they think pool noodle longswords and lightning bolt beanbags. But crossing Nerf blades with part-time barbarians is only one way to play. There's also Nordic style. In Nordic LARP, whatever you want to do, if you can describe it, you can do it as long as the other players agree to play along. Experienced LARPers call it the deep end of the pool, and I have never done anything remotely like it. But I still sought it out because a Nordic LARP offers the most leeway to bring and use custom props. I may not have any experience, but I do have a whole room of 3D printers and the most comprehensive filament collection ever seen in this particular shot. Here in Colorado, the best name for the best game seems to be Mooney Bin, a professional operation that runs tightly organized one-shot LARPs in Colorado, where I live, not New York. I have not lived in New York since 2021. No matter what I say, people are going to think I live in New York forever. So look, I threw a dart at a map and landed in Colorado, and that's why I'm looking for a LARP here. And coming soon, a Roaring '20s period fantasy where mobsters and monsters mingle and mangle at a supernatural power wedding. Everyone plays a pre-written character with secret motives, powers, and goals, which is nice because I, like all LARPing noobs, if left to my own devices, would play Sasuke Uchiha. So shout out to Mooney Bin staff writer Jesse, who penned the absolute greatest character I could possibly play. I would be Nerio, obnoxious yet loathsome self-styled student of the soul. Objective, surgically sliced through every ethical, social, and physical law in desperate pursuit of science. I am milking the giant cow with both hands, for Nerio is not a man of science. He is a man of science! Although technically he's not a man. Nerio is a vampire, a Nosferatu-ass, Morbius-ass, Count Chocula-ass vampire. And he's gotta look like one. So Brooke and I slammed in the back of our Dragula to Disguises, a massive costume shop that served Denver for like ever. And we pieced together the ultimate fit for a preternaturally tasteless walking corpse who hasn't updated his wardrobe since the Edwardian era. I had a tailcoat, lame cummerbund, and flame shoes. For the final touch, I borrowed a tube of Hungarian mustache wax from my makeup artist wife Brooke, and spent the next 3 months growing my cookie duster to twirlable proportions. You may have noticed in recent episodes, but I was trying to keep it on the down low. It's my secret stash. So quick aside while I vamp my new look. This game was set in the universe of a long-running book series I deliberately refused to read. I am not even going to mention the IP because the sleaze factor vis-a-vis the females is frankly unacceptable. It wouldn't really have helped because even though the main character is a fucking wizard, the author was clearly making up the magic system, finger quotes, by the seat of his pants. I would only consider a single part of the spellcasting lore to be well defined, but it just so happened to be the perfect choice for my character: potion making. My main unmanned Nerio is not very strong. He only has 2 willpower bracelets out of a possible 6. But when it comes to alchemy, it's the ingenuity of the ingredients, not the power of the practitioner, that determines the potency. Even the weakest vampire can brew the strongest potions. The only limit to what Nerio could accomplish is what fans of the books would let me get away with. So the more thoughtfully my formulas respect the lore, the better they'll function. Real-life fake magic acts like fictional real magic. It amuses me so. Almost every potion in the original text contains 1 reagent for each of the 5 senses, a 6th for the mind, and a 7th for the spirit, all infused into 8 ounces of some kind of liquid substrate. Their effects are not subtle, so I want my potions to actually visibly physically work. You gotta be a serious fucking dweeb to rules lawyer reality. I wrote up 3 original formulas in my new personal grimoire in sepia fountain pen and custom-made handwriting. Nerio goes fucking hard, alright? The wax signet on the cover is the letter N in the Theban alphabet, and it's also kind of 3D printed. We'll get to that. Now, I had enough parameters to start planning my project. I would build a self-contained alchemy lab in a box with 3 big sealable flasks, 21 bizarre ingredients, and some kind of tray to catch spills. The whole package had to be light enough to schlep around all day, yet sturdy enough to protect the real glass labware I hoped to use. The case itself is one part I knew I would buy, not build. In part because I'm just a terrible woodworker, but more importantly, going off the rack nailed down dozens of critical dimensions and let me focus more on the contents. So I browsed Amazon and I found this piece of dookie, crafted from aircraft grade balsa wood and wrapped in the gnarliest pleather this side of the Cold War. Those rickety latches are ready to explode and I haven't even put anything in it. This thing is glorious. It's fine if it's flimsy. We're gonna reinforce it with a custom fit insert to get sort of like a doctor's bag / chemistry set vibe, packed with fiddly little cork containers of mystery matter. Cue an epic shopping spree for bottles, vials, and anything quaint yet watertight. Listen, I love authenticity, but sometimes reality looks unrealistic. Authentic medical and chemistry gear from the 1920s actually looks quite modern. So my primary inspo was not science, but homeopathy. The entire field had been debunked by World War I, but their fake medical equipment made an awesome reference for fake medical equipment. That said, I should have done less wizard core vision boarding and more Amazon description reading, because my lovely assortment of colorful flasks turned out a tad smaller than anticipated. Luckily, character bleed had driven me mad with power, so I still had more than enough human-scale glassware to begin my grand work. I measured the case's extremely skewed interior, fired up fusion, and roughed out the inserts. I started by printing disposable slices to verify the fit. It's more efficient to intentionally trash a little plastic and confirm your assumptions than to be a self-righteous filament miser and discard an entire iteration because you fucked up one measurement. So next time you're thinking of calling me wasteful, you should stop thinking, because it's clearly not working out for you. For the real deal, I busted out one of my favorite discoveries from my Every Filament series, lightweight PLA and ASA. These have an additive called a blowing agent that never gets old, and it causes them to puff up as they print. The results can weigh as little as 40% of the same print in pure plastic. It all worked great and carved entire pounds off the build, and bonus, I discovered you can carve this lightweight filament with an X-Acto knife. I could have run the entire insert in one job on my big printer, but I sliced it into pieces anyways. By dividing and conquering, I could spread the job across multiple printers and finish faster. Plus, if one print failed or needed a tweak, I wouldn't have to reprint the entire thing. To make life easier, I added in these alignment pegs. I usually recommend E6000 or Zap-A-Gap to glue your prints, but this time I returned to Monkey and busted out the Gorilla Glue. This brown polyurethane gunk is kind of notorious in maker circles because it likes to foam up and make a mess. But this time, that's exactly what we want. And I'm aware the insert looks like crap, and we can cut off the overflow, and we're covering the whole thing in self-adhesive velvet anyways. Speaking of, I should have put more thought into how I would actually lay down the velvet, because some of these bends were super awkward, and I ended up with a bunch of gaps to patch and seams to conceal. This cheap-ass case arrived as warped and fragile as a blue-check Twitter user, but as the glue expanded, it packed the gaps and reinforced the structure. Gorilla Glue is water-activated, so it did temporarily have a soggy bottom, but it ended up with an excellent structure. It looks awesome, and this soft velvet over foamy filament does a really good job of softening impacts. So on the left side, we have those huge 8-ounce bottles, and I designed a shim to get a perfect fit. The size of the slot is the only thing that keeps the lids from jiggling off the bottles, so if we want to prevent leaks, this fit has to be A+. The right side has a divider box for vials and a covered compartment for packets, and both look way more complicated than they really are. A box divider is just a set of interlocking combs, and I didn't even have to glue these together. The velvet adds so much friction, this thing won't even wiggle. The bottom lidded compartment is a bit more complex. To keep the lid shut, I used a cursed trick from my cursed printing episode. I paused the print part way, dropped in some magnets, and I hit resume. The next layer printed over the magnets, sealing them in with no adhesive, no trace, and no chance they'll break free. So this compartment is going to hold packets of powder, and this is just a classic bit of origami plus a wax seal, you'll see. But wait, there's more. Pull off the obvious false bottom to reveal my cold iron anti-fairy rounds printed in real iron. So this is an iron composite made by a company called Protoplant, and when you buff it enough, it looks and feels exactly like rough hammered metal, no painting required. Plus, it's magnetic, so I just put a tiny neodymium dingus in every slot to keep my rounds from going on an adventure. These were meant for my semi-functional printed volcanic pistol, which I paid way too much for on Cults and turned out to not be able to use. This iron is way too big for my hip. So I ran off some Derringers, which don't actually fit my but they're the same caliber, so shut up. I'm keeping the ammo on the down low because bringing a box of cold iron rounds to a fairy wedding is like bringing a box of regular rounds to a regular wedding. But 4 of these rounds aren't cartridges at all. They're screws. Behold the super secret compartment. Tucked within are 8 alchemical rounds, the cutting edge of Nerio's occult research. Weird as it sounds, I designed these with the exact same trick as my maker chip. I copied the shrunk it down, superimposed it over itself, and rearranged the object list. By printing the big one in extra clear PETG, the slicer itself made these rounds look like fragile glass capsules of mystery schmoo. Finally, I prepared the amber glass vials. Each of these is going to hold a different ingredient, but how will I recognize them once they're in the divider box? With custom printed wax seals, of course. Of course! Technically, I didn't print the wax seals, I printed the stamps that I pressed into the sealing wax. I used heat-resistant ABS, but you can actually do this with like PETG or PLA as long as you're okay with it only surviving a few impressions. Just remember to add a draft to vertical surfaces to help the stamp release the wax. I forgot this when I made the notebook. That was kind of my prototype, but it looks kind of ratty. The vials came out awesome, but 12 ingredients is just not enough. I had some test tubes lying around from a past episode, comment if you know which one, so I modeled up a stylish yet sturdy flip-out test tube rack. Note how I added a move operation to close the box, immediately followed by the reverse operation to open it back up. This lets me parametrically ensure, for instance, the rack's crossbars line up with the vials so it can gently hold them in place. This glossy lacquered wood is also 3D printed. I featured sawdust composites before, but this one by Swedish company Adnorth is 40% Nordic birch, and that is a much lighter colored wood that makes the stain look extra vibrant. By intentionally printing low quality extra thick layers and slathering on lots and lots of varnish, I built up a surprisingly convincing faux wood grain. I think this thing looks awesome. I also had to open some space for the secret compartment's knob, and that's why I've got these scalpels. By projecting the knob onto the scalpel sketch, I guaranteed it couldn't not have headroom. With my constraints in place, I traced a real vintage surgical scalpel from a medical antiques dealer in Oregon. And the old-fashioned design didn't just look iconic, it let me print the blades out of flexible but shiny silk TPU. They make shiny silk TPU now. It's shiny enough to look sharp, but too flaccid to do any actual damage. The handles are white silk PLA, which looks astoundingly like mother of pearl. We've arrived at the final area, a detachable wooden tray with weird symbology, a super scary syringe that looks like pure tetanus, and a box of playing cards? I actually designed the tray first, then the other two things to nest inside it, but I want to save the tray for last because it's definitely the coolest thing in the case. As for the cards, remember how I wanted the potions to actually work? My first potion lets you see the future, and the demo is a cheesy card trick. But here's the fun part. You drink the potion, and I pick the card ahead of time. Tell me which card I have flipped face down.
The Four of Hearts.
I fan them out, and holy shit, nipples, a single card is face down, and you guessed it. This is a classic gimmick called the invisible deck, and without spoiling the secret, I have to take the deck out of the box a certain way after you name the card. Remembering which cards need which maneuver is the tricky part, so I printed this fancy Art Deco card case. The suit on each side is actually my cheat sheet. Why practice when you can print? As for magical printing tricks, I used 3. First, I switched filaments part way to make the symbols pop. Second, I used a brand new textured build plate. This is the only way to make silk filament shine on the top surface, not just the sides. Finally, I switched the bottom infill pattern to concentric, which gives the golden pips this swanky hand-chased finish. If you're curious about the other potions, number 2 makes mechanical devices want to work. Nerio's pocket watch is as dead as its owner until he hands it to you, you potion coiffer you, and suddenly the watch works, but hand it back and it's broken again. I'm very proud of this one. As for the third one, it basically makes me invisible. You'll see. I made a Patron-only bonus video where I brew the potions, show how they work, and reveal what each ingredient actually is. And of course, I did it all in character, and had a lovely time doing it. That's patreon.com/Zack Freedman. But enough shilling, let's get stabbing. One does not truly become a mad Victorian scientist until they flick an enormous needle. Like the scalpels, I was also going to trace a museum piece, but I actually ended up designing the cutout first and then building the syringe to fit inside it. It sounds a little weird, but it let me print the huge blocky insert while I modeled its much smaller contents. You know how I'm so smart? I did a little trepanning, added some speed holes. Ow. As for the syringe, it's your classic retractable practical effect with a blunt spring-loaded business end for authentic yet comfortable jabbing action. If you're curious, the needle is made of a cut-up coat hanger. The clear part is a polycarbonate tube I bought for the Nerf Blaster project, which I swear I'm making a video on. It just keeps getting blocked by more time-critical topics. This particular prop actually features a bunch of design and printing tricks that apply to lots of projects. First, the thumb loop is bulbous on one side but flat on the other, so it prints without any support material. Since I control which side faces you, I can just delete any geometry that complicates printing and no one would ever know. Don't do hard when easy work. To fit the case, the needle had to be detachable, but this was really easy to do in Fusion. Just model a cylinder, click the face, use the screw threads tool, and check modeled. I repeated for the mating side, offset the surfaces to give it a little wiggle room, and now I had parts that perfectly screwed together. The knurling is just a coil multiplied with a circular pattern and mirrored. This is like a classic trick. As for this thing, which is called the barrel flange, I originally printed this as a single piece, but that left some overhanging fat bottoms. Freddie Mercury put up a good argument, but the fact is, support material just does not work on slopes. So I split the handles off, printed them separately, and glued them back on. I could have wasted time cleaning a one-piece print and got a crappy result. Instead, I wasted time gluing a 3-piece print and got a crispy result. A lot of people like to write off solutions because they don't fully solve the problem. But the best solution doesn't have to solve the whole problem, it's just better than all the alternatives. Don't be a fucking idiot. I was too sloppy when I assembled the syringe, so the glue fogged up the barrel and jammed the mechanism. Instead of wasting time cleaning it out, I just reran the job and glued it more carefully. It's the magic of 3D printing. Now the grand finale, the wooden ritual tray. It does not look like it, but this is also 3D printed. But unlike the wood filament test tube holder, what you're seeing is actually wood. If you saw my RGB PC episode, you know the secret ingredient, edge banding. Edge banding is a roll of thinly sliced dead tree backed with heat-activated glue, and it lets you wrap anything that can handle a clothes iron in authentic wood grain that's thin enough to shine LEDs through. By printing the frame in ABS, I could completely conceal the plastic and make the tray look like solid wood. The surface is a polycarbonate sheet covered edge to edge in edge banding and inscribed with the magical graphic design that is my passion. I designed all this in Fusion, exported the sketch as a DW DWG, rasterized the DWG to a PNG, traced the PNG to an SVG, and ran the SVG on my wife's vinyl cutter. I really had to do all that. Fusion, Inkscape, and the vinyl cutter software handled DWG files like a drunk Floridian handles a mountain bike. These wacky shapes were such a nightmare to transfer. The instant I got them down, I entombed them in a million layers of clear coat. I then sealed the surface to the frame with plumber's goop to get everything as watertight as possible. The occult iconography looks authentic from a distance, but this is 100% Easter eggs. I watched enough Supernatural to know if I copied a real sigil from the Key of Solomon, I'd inadvertently cast real magic and like delete the moon. Again. So you may wonder, why didn't I just make the tray out of wood? I'm a terrible woodworker, but here's the real reason. The tray is hollow and I packed it with secret ergoblades. When my magnetic ring approaches this Hall sensor, the Zhao RP2040 slowly ramps up the glow till the center of the sigil is bright red. Nerio's third potion basically turns him invisible, and this is how you indicate this to other players. So mysterious. This is my most useful potion, and it'll be more practically magical if it, looks practically magical. So I made the potion itself the trick. The first ingredient is rheoscopic powder, which makes the liquid look impossibly swirly, but more importantly, diffuses the underlighting so the tray makes it look like the liquid itself is glowing. But once I sip my final brew and transcend visibility, the tray serves one last purpose. It lets Nerio whisk everything out of sight and end the show on a high note. As fellow vampire Benjamin Franklin so eloquently put it, when you yeet the skeet, you call an Uber. I'd like to thank my patrons for making this whole thing possible. The LARP itself was a life-changing experience for me and a life-ending one for Nerio. He got stabbed in the back, doused in holy water, and set on fire at the same time. He didn't make it. Luckily, shortly before his untimely demise, Nerio documented his experiments in a moving picture. If you want to see how his unlife's work actually works, or you're just curious what these weird ingredients actually are, you can watch the entire mustachio-twirling alchemical exhibition at patreon.com/Zack Freedman. He actually had to devise a fourth potion for a major plotline, and since I was out of shitty magic tricks, I had to resort to actual chemistry. This event was a one-shot, so I am never reprising this role. This is the very last time anyone will ever see Zack Freedman as Nerio. Support my videos, see some crazy potions, and join cool patrons like today's 3 random lab scientists. How apropos! Cackle madly for Muvlon, Parliament, and Things 3D. Like the whole site? Well, thank you! And of course, our super normal collaborators. That doesn't mean extra normal, it means extraordinary. Because I shot most of this footage before the event, I couldn't sneak in the usual Easter eggs, except onto the vials themselves. Thank you, Turner, Zay, ZomboDB, Schleppy the Schwagster, Scott Rainey, the Benevolent Misanthrope, The Suits Ruined Our Fun, Chuck Me Harder Baby, Microwave, SXP, and GridFi.cc. Finally, our lab assistants. I gotta slim this part down or the algorithm spanks me, so our most loyal supporters and I are now on a first-name basis. Thank you, Bill, Mike, the Cooler Bill, DBD, Tommy, Talon, Quantumly Tangled, Mirman, Jack, Bryn, Jeff, Haley, Zan, Roger, Matt, Evanosaurus, Carrot, Dale, Dez, Timor, Shane, the Cune, Rusty Flute, Eddie, not Prince McKeel of Sealand, Dennis, Acorn, Zap, Renode, 3 Raccoons, Reagan, Crash Doom, Kermit, Moonkin, Danny Devoid, Amanishi, 6A6F, William Tancredi, DVM, Onyx Plague, Joe, John, T-Kites, Take It Easy, Spire, Kevin, Cullen.zip on Blue Sky, my printer broke again, Brad Cox, Austin, T. Pizzy, Slippy, Maxwell, Tevin, Chris, Travis, Quality Doggo, TR Fullheart, Deorbital Mechanic, Nuclear, VK2KTJ, Martin, Period Clots, Lost Dryer Socks, Cody, ZAC, The Cameron, Iron Rain, The Snow Cow Cabal, Protagonist, Rob, Dan, Alex, Land Jesus, Craft Computing, Socks Magox, Bob Squared, Sticks, Cliff, ZACH, Michael, Stormby Design, Transrights, Mike, Acalia, PRD, Gotham, Blammo, Viwatch, Ergay, RoboKeymao, Armakeel, Ralston, Chorance, A Purdy House, The Cooler Cameron, John Loves Jen, Rihanna 99 Urch, Al Finger, Good Suck, A Shart, Right to Repair, Olive, Doom Crewing, Tony, Walrus, Chartolo, Scroto, Clayton, James, Wuhan, The Cuttlefish, Haunted Water Heater, Paul, Sunburnt Cat, Kathy, and Brent Trump, The Krollster, Buck Turgidson, Good Lady Nat, Deny Defend Depose, No Disassemble, SKL, The Monk, Novaren, Spamuel, Lydia K, Aaron, Anti-Tux, The Cooler Travis, Powerful CCH, Max Luck, Burnduck 3, Igor Box, and the coolest Bob of them all. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see your blood in my mouth!